The sun cast long shadows over Mojave's dusty Main Street as Willow O'Connor wiped the sweat from her brow, her calloused hands betraying the hardship of a life spent struggling to keep her late father's newspaper afloat. At 23, she carried the burden of the Mojave Messenger alone, a woman in a man's world where her words were often dismissed before the ink had dried on the page. California's unforgiving desert stretched beyond the town limits, its golden hues masking the harshness that had claimed her mother to consumption years ago, her father to a bullet just 6 months prior. The year was 1876, and while the nation celebrated its centennial back east, Willow fought daily battles just to survive. "Miss O'Connor," Sheriff Palmer called, his weathered face appearing at her office door. "Thought you might want to know that stagecoach finally arrived." Bringing that new ranch hand for the Zimmerman spread, Willow barely glanced up from her printing press. "Another drifter passing through, I suppose. This one's different," Palmer said, chewing thoughtfully on his mustache. "Fought with the Union. Decorated, they say." Willow's fingers stilled on the type blocks. The Zimmerman Ranch was the largest in the territory, and Old Man Zimmerman had been a vocal Confederate sympathizer during the war. "That should make for interesting dinner conversation," she murmured. Palmer shrugged. "Times change. Even old enemies need to work together these days." As the sheriff departed, Willow found her curiosity piqued. She moved to the window, wiping away dust to peer at the stage that had pulled up outside the Mojave Hotel. Passengers descended, weary from the journey, women in travel-stained dresses, businessmen clutching portfolios, and then a tall figure in a long duster coat. Even from a distance, he commanded attention. Broad-shouldered and standing straight as a pine, he surveyed the town with the cautious assessment of a man who'd seen too many new places to be easily impressed. His hat was pulled low, shadowing his face, but something in his stance made her breath catch. Willow turned away from the window, chiding herself for such foolishness. She had a newspaper to publish, a legacy to protect, and no time for staring at strangers, no matter how compelling their silhouettes. The following morning, Willow was interviewing Mrs. Henderson about the upcoming harvest festival when the bell above her door chimed. She looked up to see the stranger from yesterday filling her doorframe, his hat now in his hands. "Miss O'Connor." His voice was deep but gentle, like distant thunder that promised rain without threat. "Yes." She stood, unconsciously smoothing her simple blue dress. "Samuel Zimmerman," he introduced himself, extending a hand. "Not related to my employer despite the shared surname." His grip was firm, his skin sun darkened against hers. Willow found herself staring into eyes the color of a summer storm, gray with hints of blue. "Welcome to Mojave, Mr. Zimmerman. I take it you're the new ranch hand Sheriff Palmer mentioned." A smile touched his lips. "Ranch foreman, actually. Just arrived from Colorado." Mrs. Henderson cleared her throat meaningfully, and Willow realized she was still holding the man's hand. She withdrew quickly, heat rising in her cheeks. "Pardon the interruption," Samuel said, nodding respectfully to Mrs. Henderson. "I was hoping to place a small advertisement in your newspaper. Mr. Zimmerman is expanding the ranch operations and seeking additional hands." Willow gestured to the chair beside her desk. "I can help you with that. Mrs. Henderson and I were just finishing." After Mrs. Henderson departed with knowing looks that Willow studiously ignored, she pulled out her ledger. "Now, Mr. Zimmerman, Sam, please." "Sam," she amended. "What exactly are you looking to advertise?" He settled into the chair, his tall frame making her office furniture seem suddenly small. "We need experienced cattle hands, a cook who can feed 20 men without complaint, and someone with bookkeeping skills." "That's quite an expansion." Willow made notes, careful to keep her tone professional. Mr. Zimmerman must have great confidence in you to put such responsibility in your hands so quickly. Something flickered across Sam's face. We have history. I served under his son during the war. I see. Willow didn't, not entirely, but she sensed complexity in the simple statement. And now you're managing his ranch. Life takes unexpected turns, Miss O'Connor. His eyes met hers directly. I'm sure you understand that better than most. The reference to her own circumstances, a woman running a newspaper in a frontier town, wasn't lost on her. Indeed I do, Mr. Zimmerman. Indeed I do. As she wrote up his advertisement, Willow found herself stealing glances at his hands, strong but careful, as he pointed out specifics for the posting. Those were hands that had seen war but could still handle delicate paper without tearing it. When he left, promising to return the following week to check the responses, the office felt strangely empty. The advertisement brought numerous responses, as work was scarce that summer. Each time Sam visited to review applications, he and Willow fell into increasingly comfortable conversation. She learned he'd grown up in Pennsylvania, enlisted at 18, and had spent the years since the war's end moving westward, never quite finding a place to call home. "What brought you to Mojave?" she asked one afternoon as they sorted through letters. "Honestly, I was headed to San Francisco," Sam admitted, leaning back in his chair. "But I met the younger Zimmerman Thomas in Denver. We recognized each other from Gettysburg, got to talking. He mentioned his father needed help modernizing the ranch operations. And you just changed your plans completely." Willow couldn't imagine altering her course so dramatically. Sam studied her for a moment. "Sometimes the path you're meant to take isn't the one you set out on." His gaze lingered on her face longer than was strictly proper. "What about you? Have you always wanted to run a newspaper?" Willow looked down at her ink-stained fingers. "No, I wanted to teach, actually, but when my father was killed." She swallowed hard. "This newspaper was his life. I couldn't let it die with him." "You honor him by continuing his work," Sam said quietly. Their conversations gradually expanded beyond ranch business. Sam began bringing books to exchange. He had an unexpected fondness for poetry that contradicted his rugged exterior. Willow found herself looking forward to his visits, the highlight of weeks otherwise filled with town gossip and tedious local politics. On a particularly hot August afternoon, Willow was delivering papers when she spotted Sam in deep conversation with Thomas Zimmerman outside the Mercantile. Something in their manner, the tense shoulders, the lowered voices, suggested the exchange was heated. She hesitated, not wanting to intrude, but Sam caught sight of her and his expression immediately lightened. "Miss O'Connor," he called, gesturing her over. "Perfect timing. Thomas here doesn't believe your newspaper reaches as far as San Bernardino." Thomas Zimmerman, a narrow-faced man with his father's imperious bearing, gave Willow a curt nod. "No offense intended, Miss O'Connor, just questioning the practical reach of a small-town publication." "We have subscribers throughout San Bernardino County," Willow replied evenly, though her pride was pricked, "and exchange arrangements with papers in Los Angeles and San Francisco." Thomas raised an eyebrow. Impressive for a... He hesitated. For a woman. Willow supplied, her voice sweet but her eyes hard. Sam coughed to hide what might have been a laugh. "Thomas was just leaving to check on the cattle purchases," he said pointedly. After Thomas departed with a stiff farewell, Sam turned to Willow with an apologetic smile. "He means well. Just hasn't quite adjusted to the changing times." "Few have," Willow replied. She'd faced worse than Thomas Zimmerman's barely concealed condescension. "Was that all you were discussing? Newspaper circulation?" A shadow crossed Sam's face. "No, but nothing worth troubling you with. Ranch business." His dismissal, however gentle, stung. "I see. Well, I should continue my deliveries. Good day, Mr. Zimmerman." She turned to leave, but his hand caught her arm lightly, respectfully, but enough to stop her. "Willow, wait." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the sound of it in his voice made her heart skip traitorously. "Would you join me for supper at the hotel tonight?" he asked, releasing her arm. "I'd like to make amends for Thomas's rudeness and my own." Willow knew she should decline. Being seen dining alone with an unmarried man would set tongues wagging. But something in Sam's eyes' earnestness mingled with what might have been longing made her nod. "7 o'clock," she said, and continued on her way, feeling his gaze following her down the street. That evening, dressed in her best blue gown with her auburn hair carefully arranged, Willow entered the hotel dining room with trepidation. The few other diners glanced up, surprise evident on several faces. Sam stood as she approached their table, pulling out her chair with a grace that belied his frontier surroundings. "You look beautiful," he said simply as she sat. "Thank you." Willow smoothed her napkin, aware of Mrs. Porter and her daughters watching from across the room. "I believe we're causing a minor scandal." Sam's mouth quirked. "Small towns, would you rather go elsewhere?" "No," Willow surprised herself with her certainty. "Let them talk. I'm not doing anything wrong by dining with a friend." The hesitation before "friend" didn't escape either of them, hanging in the air between them as they ordered and began their meal. Over roast beef and potatoes, Sam finally spoke of what she'd witnessed earlier. "Thomas is concerned about cattle rustling along the western pastures. Several herds have been hit in the past month." "I haven't heard reports of rustling," Willow frowned. "Sheriff Palmer hasn't mentioned anything." "That's because the ranchers aren't reporting it," Sam explained, his voice low. "They believe the sheriff might be compromised." Willow stared at him. "That's a serious accusation. Palmer's been sheriff here for 15 years, which gives him plenty of connections to organize something like this," Sam pointed out. "I'm not saying he's guilty, just that some ranchers are suspicious." "And what do you think?" Sam considered, sipping his coffee. "I think something strange is happening. Cattle disappear, but there are no obvious trails, no large herds being moved across territory where they'd be noticed." The journalist in Willow was immediately intrigued. "You think they're being taken somewhere nearby? Slaughtered and sold as meat rather than moved as livestock?" Sam looked impressed. "That's my theory. It would require local knowledge, facilities for butchering, and distribution networks, all of which the sheriff would have access to," Willow concluded, "but so would others." "Precisely why I haven't made accusations." Sam leaned forward. "I need more information before I act." Willow corrected. "Before we act. If something illegal is happening in Mojave, the messenger will report it." Sam's expression grew troubled. "Willow, this could be dangerous. These people, whoever they are, have already killed 2 ranch hands who stumbled across their operation." Cold dread pooled in Willow's stomach. "Killed? There have been no reports of murders. The bodies were found in Nevada territory, listed as victims of a robbery. But you don't believe that?" Sam shook his head. Both men had recently confronted Palmer about missing cattle. They spoke long into the evening, their half-eaten desserts forgotten as they pieced together what information they had. When they finally emerged from the hotel, the night air had cooled the streets and stars blanketed the desert sky. "I'll walk you home," Sam said, offering his arm. Willow hesitated only briefly before taking it, feeling the solid strength of him beside her. The town was quiet, most windows dark, though light still spilled from the saloon down the street. "Thank you for trusting me with this," she said as they walked. "Most men wouldn't consider a woman's help in such matters." "Most men are fools, then," Sam replied simply. You're the smartest person I've met in Mojave, man or woman." They reached the small house behind the newspaper office that served as Willow's home. She turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, how private this moment felt in the shadow of her porch. "Sam," she began, unsure what she meant to say. He saved her from uncertainty by gently taking her hand and raising it to his lips. The gesture was old-fashioned, respectful, yet the touch of his mouth against her skin sent warmth spiraling through her. "Good night, Willow," he said softly. "Lock your door, and be careful what you print about the sheriff until we know more." With that, he was gone, striding back toward the hotel, leaving Willow touching the back of her hand where his lips had been. Over the next few weeks, Willow found herself drawn deeper into the mystery. She combed through old newspapers, noting patterns of cattle sales and slaughterhouse reports. Sam brought information from neighboring ranches, evidence slowly mounting against not just Sheriff Palmer but several prominent businessmen in Mojave and surrounding communities. Their investigation necessitated frequent meetings, some in her office, others on the pretext of reviewing ranch advertisements, and occasionally quiet suppers at the hotel. Each encounter strengthened the connection between them, a partnership building on mutual respect that gradually blossomed into something more. It was during one such meeting in late September, as they pored over shipping manifests Sam had borrowed from the railroad office, that disaster struck. The door to Willow's office burst open, Sheriff Palmer standing there with two deputies, his hand resting meaningfully on his pistol. "Well now," he drawled, taking in the scattered papers and their startled faces, "isn't this cozy? Miss O'Connor and Mr. Zimmerman burning the midnight oil." Sam rose slowly, positioning himself slightly in front of Willow. "Evening, Sheriff. Something we can help you with. Indeed there is." Palmer gestured to the papers. "Those appear to be private railroad documents, stolen property, one might say." Willow stepped forward, refusing to hide behind Sam. "We're working on a story about regional commerce. The railroad agent provided these copies." "Did he now?" Palmer's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Funny, because he reported them stolen this afternoon. Said someone matching Mr. Zimmerman's description was asking unusual questions before they went missing." "This is absurd," Sam said calmly. "If there's been a misunderstanding—" "Oh, it's no misunderstanding." Palmer nodded to his deputies. "Samuel Zimmerman, you're under arrest for theft and suspicion of cattle rustling." "What?" Willow gasped. "That's preposterous. Sam's been investigating the rustling, not committing it. Convenient cover, wouldn't you say?" Palmer stepped forward as the deputies moved to handcuff Sam. "And you, Miss O'Connor, I expected better from John's daughter. Your father knew when to look the other way for the good of Mojave." The implication sent ice through Willow's veins. "My father was an honest man." "Your father was practical," Palmer corrected. "Something you clearly haven't learned." Sam didn't resist as the deputy secured his hands, but his eyes never left Willow's. "It's all right," he said quietly. "Contact Thomas Zimmerman. Tell him what's happened." "You won't be contacting anyone," Palmer informed Willow. "Consider your newspaper shut down pending investigation of conspiracy charges." He produced a document from his coat, a closure order with Judge Harmon's signature. Willow recognized the judge as one of the men whose name had appeared repeatedly in their investigation. "You can't do this," she protested, though she knew very well that in a town like Mojave the sheriff and judge held nearly absolute power. "Already done." Palmer tipped his hat mockingly. "Deputies, escort Mr. Zimmerman to a cell." "I'll be along directly after I ensure Miss O'Connor understands her new circumstances." As they led Sam away, he called back, "Willow, don't fight them. Stay safe, I'll find a way to fix this." When they were gone, Palmer circled Willow's desk, examining the evidence they'd gathered. "Impressive work," he admitted. "Shame it has to end this way." "What way is that?" Willow asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite her racing heart. Palmer's expression hardened. "You have two choices. Leave Mojave tonight, or join your cowboy friend in a cell, though I can't guarantee your safety there, being the only woman among desperate men." His meaning was clear, and Willow fought to hide her revulsion. "And if I leave, the charges against you disappear. Your newspaper remains closed, but you walk away unharmed." He gestured to the documents. "These will be destroyed, and Mr. Zimmerman will face justice for his crimes." "Crimes you committed," Willow said boldly. Palmer shrugged. "Prove it." "Oh, wait, you can't. Because all your evidence is now in my possession, and your primary witness is facing the gallows for murder." "Murder? There's no murder charge." "There will be by morning," Palmer said coldly. "One of the ranch hands killed by the rustlers was my second cousin. Witnesses will place Zimmerman at the scene." "False witnesses," Willow spat. "Does it matter? A jury of Mojave citizens will believe what they're told to believe." Palmer moved toward the door. "You have 1 hour to pack your belongings and be on the eastbound stage. I've taken the liberty of purchasing your ticket." After he left, Willow collapsed into her chair, mind racing. Fleeing would save her life but condemn Sam to certain death. Staying meant imprisonment at best, her own death at worst, and no guarantee she could help Sam anyway. There was a third option, though one Palmer hadn't considered. Working quickly, Willow gathered the most damning evidence they'd collected, making copies of crucial documents. She hid these in a false bottom of her father's old toolbox, then packed a small valise with essential items. Lastly, she penned 2 letters, one to Thomas Zimmerman explaining everything, another to her father's old friend Marcus Rivera, who ran the newspaper in San Bernardino. As the hour Palmer had given her drew to a close, Willow donned her traveling cloak and hat, picked up her valise, and walked openly to the stagecoach office. Palmer's deputy was waiting there, ticket in hand. "Sheriff says to make sure you get on this coach," he said, not unkindly. Young Deputy Collins had always been decent to her. "I understand." Willow accepted the ticket. "May I ask a favor, Deputy Collins? Would you deliver this letter to the post office in the morning? It's to my aunt in San Francisco, letting her know of my sudden travel plans." Collins hesitated, then nodded, taking the sealed envelope addressed to Thomas Zimmerman. "I'm sorry about all this, Miss O'Connor. Don't seem right." "Thank you," she said softly. "Things aren't always what they seem in Mojave, are they?" Something in his expression suggested Collins knew more than he let on, but the arrival of the stage prevented further conversation. Willow boarded with a final glance at the town that had been her home all her life, now transformed into a place of danger and corruption. What Palmer and his deputies didn't see was Willow slipping off the stage at its first stop, 10 miles outside Mojave. While the other passengers refreshed themselves at the way station, she paid the station manager's son to carry a message to the Zimmerman ranch. Then, using money sewn into the lining of her cloak, a precaution her father had taught her, she hired a horse and rode north through the night. By dawn, she reached the mining camp of New Fortune, a chaotic settlement where questions weren't asked and Palmer had no authority. There, she found temporary lodging and sent her letter to Marcus Rivera via a traveling salesman. 3 days later, Rivera himself arrived with a U.S. Marshal in tow. Willow's evidence, combined with Rivera's own investigations into cattle theft across county lines, was enough for federal intervention. Marshal James Wilson was a no-nonsense lawman who'd been watching Palmer's operation for months, lacking only the documentation Willow provided to move against him. "What about Sam Zimmerman?" Willow demanded after explaining everything. "He's innocent, but they're framing him for murder." "We'll move fast," Wilson assured her, "but carefully. Palmer has too many allies for a direct approach." The plan they devised was risky. While Wilson gathered reinforcements from Los Angeles, Willow would return to Mojave in disguise with Rivera, posing as his assistant. They would contact Thomas Zimmerman, retrieve the hidden evidence, and document the conditions of Sam's imprisonment. Once Wilson arrived with additional marshals, they would move against Palmer and his entire network simultaneously. Returning to Mojave a week after her forced departure, Willow barely recognized herself in the mirror. Her auburn hair was hidden beneath a black wig, her usual practical dresses replaced by the flamboyant attire of a traveling performer, part of Rivera's cover, as a touring theater promoter scouting venues. They took rooms at the Mojave Hotel, directly across from the sheriff's office and jail where Sam was held. Through casual conversations in the dining room, they learned he was alive but had been badly beaten during questioning about the cattle thefts. The murder charge had indeed materialized, with a trial scheduled for the following week. That night, Willow slipped out to the Zimmerman ranch, where Thomas was waiting. Despite their previous friction, he received her with grave concern. "I never believed Sam was involved," he said, pacing his study. "He's been warning us about Palmer for months. My father refused to listen, thought accusing the sheriff would bring more trouble than it was worth." "And now?" Willow asked. Thomas's expression hardened. "Now I'm ready to bring the whole corrupt operation down. My father may have Confederate sympathies, but he draws the line at criminal conspiracies that threaten his ranch. He's gathering the other ranchers as we speak." With Thomas's help, Willow recovered the hidden evidence and formulated the next phase of their plan. She needed to see Sam to ensure he was alive, to tell him help was coming, and to gather any additional information he might have. The opportunity came when Rivera arranged a special performance at the saloon, drawing most of the town, including Palmer's deputies, for an evening of entertainment. Disguised as a young male stable hand, Willow approached the jail's back entrance where Thomas had arranged for Deputy Collins to be on duty alone. "You're taking an awful risk, Miss O'Connor," Collins whispered as he led her to Sam's cell. "Palmer would kill you both if he knew." "Why are you helping us?" Willow asked. Collins's young face looked suddenly older. "My brother was one of the ranch hands they killed. Palmer told everyone it was rustlers, but I found a letter in his desk that suggested otherwise." He unlocked the cell door. "You have 10 minutes. I'll whistle if anyone comes." Sam was lying on a narrow cot, his face bruised, one arm bandaged. He squinted in the dim light as the cell door opened, not recognizing Willow in her disguise. "Sam," she whispered, moving to his side. "It's me." His eyes widened in recognition, then immediately filled with concern. "Willow, are you mad? If Palmer finds you here, he won't," she assured him, quickly explaining the plan as she examined his injuries. "The marshals arrive tomorrow. We'll have you out by sunset." Sam shook his head weakly. "It's too dangerous. Palmer isn't working alone. There are men in Sacramento, even San Francisco, involved in this operation. They're using the railroad to move the meat, bribing officials all along the line." "We know," Willow said, taking his uninjured hand. "Your information, combined with what Rivera uncovered in San Bernardino and my father's old notes, exposed the entire network. This is bigger than just cattle rustling, Sam. They've been smuggling stolen goods, evading federal taxes, even running an opium operation through the same channels." Sam tried to sit up, wincing with pain. "Your father knew about this. He was investigating it when he was killed," Willow said softly. That wasn't a random shooting during a robbery like Palmer claimed. They murdered him because he was getting too close to the truth. Understanding dawned in Sam's eyes. That's why you wouldn't leave Mojave all these years, even with better opportunities elsewhere. You suspected something about his death. Willow nodded, throat tight. I couldn't prove anything, not until you came with your own suspicions about the rustling. A low whistle from Collins interrupted them. Someone's coming, Willow warned. I have to go, hold on until tomorrow. She moved to leave, but Sam caught her wrist. Willow, if something goes wrong, it won't, she insisted. If it does, he continued urgently, know that meeting you was worth whatever happens. I've drifted all my life, never belonging anywhere, until Mojave, until you. The approaching footsteps grew louder. Willow leaned down swiftly, pressing her lips to his in a brief, fierce kiss. That's not goodbye, she whispered against his mouth. That's a promise to return. Then she was gone, slipping out through the back entrance Collins held open, disappearing into the night just as Sheriff Palmer rounded the corner of the jail. Dawn brought Marshal Wilson and 12 federal agents to a staging area outside Mojave. By noon, they had surrounded the town, coordinating with Thomas Zimmerman and the loyal ranchers who positioned themselves strategically to prevent escape routes. Rivera's performers created a diversion at the saloon, drawing Palmer and most of his deputies away from the jail. The plan worked perfectly until it didn't. As Wilson moved to arrest Palmer, one of the saloon girls apparently on Palmer's payroll fired a warning shot. The town erupted into chaos. Palmer and his men barricaded themselves in the sheriff's office, using the jail and its prisoners as shields. We have arrest warrants for Palmer and 17 others, Wilson told the assembled group at their fallback position in the hotel. But he's threatening to kill the prisoners if we move in. How many prisoners are there? Rivera asked. 3, Thomas Zimmerman answered grimly. Sam and 2 locals Palmer arrested for speaking against him. Willow, still in her theater costume but now openly part of the planning, studied the crude map of the jail they'd drawn. There's a weakness they don't know about, she said suddenly. My father added a reinforced cellar beneath the newspaper office after a fire nearly destroyed the building in '68. It connects to the old mining tunnels that run under half the town. Including under the jail, Wilson asked sharply. Within 20 feet, Willow confirmed. Close enough to dig through if we had time. They didn't have time, but they had dynamite. Thomas Zimmerman sent a ranch hand riding at breakneck speed to bring back blasting supplies used for clearing boulder-strewn pastureland. While they waited, Palmer made his first demand: safe passage out of town for himself and 3 key deputies, or he would start shooting prisoners. We need a distraction, Wilson decided. Something to keep Palmer's attention on the front of the jail while we approach from below. I'll do it, Willow volunteered. He wants me almost as badly as he wants to escape. If he thinks I've returned, he'll focus on capturing me. Despite vehement objections from Rivera and others, Willow's plan prevailed. As dusk fell, she shed her disguise, donned one of her recognizable dresses retrieved from her home, and walked openly down Mojave's main street toward the newspaper office visible from the jail's front windows. As expected, shots rang out from the sheriff's office, forcing her to take cover behind a water trough. Palmer's voice bellowed through a speaking trumpet. O'Connor, I see you came back after all. Throw down any weapons and approach with your hands up or Zimmerman dies first. I want proof he's alive, Willow shouted back, giving Wilson and his men time to access the cellar entrance behind her building. Moments later, Sam was pushed to a window, his hands bound, Palmer's gun visible against his temple. Even at a distance, Willow could see fresh bruising on his face. Satisfied, Palmer called. "Now approach slowly." Willow stood, hands raised, and began walking toward the jail. Each step was agony, knowing what was about to happen, praying the timing would work. She was 30 feet from the jail when the ground beneath the building trembled. A muffled explosion shook the street, followed by shouts of confusion from inside the jail. Wilson had promised a controlled blast just enough to open a passage into the jail's cellar without bringing down the building. Willow dived for cover as gunfire erupted, both from inside the jail and from Wilson's men now surrounding the building. The gunfight was brief, but intense. When silence finally fell, Marshal Wilson emerged from the jail with Palmer in handcuffs, followed by his deputies similarly restrained. Willow held her breath until Sam appeared, supported by Thomas Zimmerman, his face ashen but eyes alert, scanning the street until they found her. She ran to him, heedless of propriety, of watching eyes, of anything but the miracle of his survival. He caught her with his good arm, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You came back," he murmured into her hair. "I promised," she replied, tears streaming freely now. "I promised." The aftermath unfolded over days that blurred together. Palmer and his accomplices were transported to Los Angeles for trial. Marshal Wilson's investigation expanded, leading to arrests throughout California and Nevada. The Mojave Messenger published the full story, its circulation tripling as other newspapers reprinted Willow's account of corruption exposed and justice served. Sam's injuries healed slowly. He resigned from the Zimmerman ranch, uncertain of his future, until Thomas offered a partnership instead, recognition of his role in saving not just the ranch but many others from Palmer's operation. Through it all, Willow and Sam were inseparable, their shared ordeal forging a bond that neither questioned nor defined until an evening in late October, when they walked along the ridge overlooking Mojave. The desert sunset painted the landscape in gold and crimson, the town below them peaceful at last. "I've been offered a position," Willow said, breaking their comfortable silence. "The San Francisco Chronicle wants a correspondent to cover the territorial expansion. They read my articles about Palmer." Sam's expression remained carefully neutral. "San Francisco would be lucky to have you. Your father would be proud." "I haven't accepted yet," she said, studying his face. "I wanted to discuss it with you first." "With me?" Something like hope flickered in his eyes. "Why?" Willow took a deep breath. "Because what happens to you matters to me. Because I don't want to leave you. Because these past months, despite everything, or perhaps because of everything, I've come to care for you in ways I never expected." Sam took her hands in his. "Willow O'Connor, are you saying you'd consider staying in Mojave for me?" "I'm saying I'd consider going or staying, but not without knowing where we stand, what this is between us." "This," Sam said softly, drawing her closer, "is me falling in love with the bravest, smartest, most stubborn woman I've ever met. This is me finding home after years of wandering. This is me hoping you might feel even a fraction of what I feel for you." Willow's heart thundered in her chest. "And if I do, then we figure out the rest together." His hands moved to frame her face. "San Francisco, Mojave, anywhere in between, I just want to be where you are." "Sam," she whispered, overwhelmed by the certainty in his voice, the tenderness in his touch, "why would you choose me? You could go anywhere, start fresh without the complications I bring." The cowboy's smile was gentle as his thumbs traced her cheekbones. "Because you're the only one I see. Always. From that first day in your office, covered in printer's ink and determination, you've been the only one." When he kissed her this time, there was no rush, no danger pressing at their heels, just the promise of all the tomorrows stretching before them. They married on Christmas Day, 1876, with Marshal Wilson returning to stand as Sam's best man and Marcus Rivera giving Willow away. The Mojave Messenger announced their union on its front page, alongside news that the paper would expand, opening a second office in San Francisco while maintaining its Mojave headquarters. Sam's partnership with the Zimmerman Ranch flourished, introducing modern practices that increased productivity while improving conditions for the workers. Willow's articles on territorial development earned national recognition, even as she continued chronicling the everyday stories of Mojave citizens. In the spring of 1878, their son John Samuel Zimmerman was born, named for Willow's father and his own. A daughter, Elizabeth, followed 18 months later. By 1885, the Zimmerman family had grown to include twin boys, Henry and William, their home expanding to accommodate not just children but the printing press Willow insisted on keeping in a dedicated room for special projects. As Mojave grew from frontier outpost to established town, the Zimmermans remained at its heart. The newspaper office where they first met became a landmark, its walls eventually adorned with framed front pages documenting the town's transformation and their own journey from strangers to partners in every sense. On their 20th anniversary, Sam surprised Willow with a bound collection of every article she'd written. Inside the cover, he'd inscribed a simple message: "To the only one I see, always." That night, as they sat on their porch watching the desert sunset, Willow leaned against her husband's shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if you'd continued to San Francisco instead of stopping in Mojave?" Sam's arm tightened around her. "Not for a moment. Some decisions reshape your entire life, and staying in Mojave was the best one I ever made." "Because of what we accomplished here?" Willow asked, thinking of the thriving ranch, the respected newspaper, their 4 children now nearly grown. Sam turned to face her, the years having added silver to his temples but none of the hardness that had marked him when they first met. His eyes still held that same warmth when they looked at her. "Because of you," he said simply. "Everything else, the work, the success, even the children, they are all precious beyond measure. But it began with you. It always comes back to you." In the distance, the train whistle announced the evening arrival from Los Angeles. Mojave had changed, expanded, connected to the wider world. But in the gathering twilight, with Sam's hand in hers and decades of shared history between them, Willow knew some things remained constant. They had chosen each other when choice seemed impossible. They had built something lasting in a place where permanence was rare. And through every challenge, every triumph, every ordinary day between, they had remained the only ones each other truly saw, always.